Are you looking for inspiring conversations about faith, film, and life? You're in the right place. Here's the host who knows the right questions to ask, Father Edward Looney.
Hey everybody, it's Father Edward, and I have the opportunity to share another movie with you. One that I had the opportunity to pre-screen. It's called Lost on a Mountain in Maine. The title pretty much tells you what you can expect in the movie. I've told some people about the movie. I get to interview the director. I've seen this movie, and they're like, "Well, what's it about?" I'm like, "Well, it's about a boy who gets lost on a mountain in Maine." So today I'm speaking with Andrew Kightlinger, who is the director of the film, and grateful for the time. So thanks so much, Andrew, for joining me.
Thanks for having me on. And you are correct. The simplicity of the title also, I think it reflects what I was trying to achieve with the movie and its messaging and themes as well. So
Yeah. So
great.
one of the things that I noticed, kind of in the notes that were sent, to us, was that they commented that you were hired as the director. First of all, you grew up as a missionary in Madagascar, I believe, and then it says there's this note that says he was hired as the director after the most unique audition ever. Does that sound right? So
That
what's that
does.
all about?
Yeah, so this movie was incubated, as I like to say, in Sylvester Stallone's company, and they were, he obviously makes movies about people who persevere. He's been doing that since the beginning of his fame, and he'd never done one about a kid before. And I think when they were looking for a director, they were also kind of looking for somebody who's rather intrepid and underdoggy, I guess. And I did the regular interview process against other directors. That was very boring. You're talking about strategy and leadership and vision, yada, yada, yada. But after about 3 months of that stuff, my final test was being flown out to northern Maine and having to hike the titular mountain. That was my final job interview. And Mount Katahdin is known as the hardest non-technical day hike in America. So it's not easy. And it's straight up for a mile, and it's like doing the stair stepper for 6 hours straight one way. But I made it, and I got my deal memo literally days later.
Yeah, well, that's great. I don't think every director would be able to do that. So it takes
True.
a special person for that. But I guess that gives you kind of the experience of what Fendler, what he would have experienced, as a kid, and he went back and he hiked it later in his life as well. So, but why is it important to tell this story? Why make this movie now?
Well, first off, I found that the film was a movie that we don't see much anymore. We used to get them a lot more in the 80s and the 90s, and somehow the PG-rated family adventure movie is a lost art. So that attracted me, the material. I also think the simplicity of the themes, I think, are really necessary in the very complex, cynical, noisy world that we live in right now of family and hope and community and faith. And I think all those things are things we need to be reminded of. And that's kind of why I wanted to make it.
Yeah, so I intend to do like a little short for TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, all that, tonight or tomorrow as the movie hits theaters. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just say three things to watch for in Lost on a Mountain in Maine. And so, one of them, I think it's an interesting dynamic of the father figure. So kind of father familial relationship with father and son, father and his wife, all of these things. So that's one of them. Another one is simply, there are these little like cries of the heart to God in the movie, where they're praying, where the boy who's lost is praying. And so, those are just a few of the things that I want people to look for. But I'm wondering, what's something that you would say somebody should look for as they're taking in the movie?
I think they should look for the cosmic kind of metaphysical connections in the film. And you mentioned how God is present sort of under the meniscus of the movie. One of my favorite moments in the film is where the mother's connecting with the child, even though they're in different places, they're connecting with each other almost spiritually. And she's thinking about where he is in the woods, and he's thinking about where she is at the home. So I want people to kind of that was an important theme for me, is the connection between parent and child, and representing this father who's struggling to connect with his child, and the mother who has this deep connection, and kind of juxtaposing those two. I hope that wasn't too long of an answer for what you're looking for there.
Yeah, no, that's great. So let's talk a little bit more about the father, because I started watching it. I'm like, well, this is just kind of an odd dynamic: the father and the home and the family and everything like that. And this is based on a true story. So it ends up that this person, Don Fendler, the boy that's lost, he writes a book, or someone writes a book, and that's how this story is popularized and all of that. But yeah, what do you make of that father relationship? I'm assuming it's mirrored on the real life story.
Oh, absolutely. It was one of the reasons I wanted to make the film. I have a great relationship with my father, and so I believe that that bond is very important. Well, parent-child bonds are important in general. And so for this film, what I connected to was this idea of these two people who just can't say "I love you" to each other, and they have to go through this arduous experience in order to get to that place. And I always remind people that in the end, this movie is just about a boy who wants a hug from his dad. So, it's a movie for families. It's definitely the target audience is kids, but it doesn't have to talk down to them. And I think parents can also relate to it because they're seeing their own struggles reflected. How do I raise my children? What are the rules? There are no rules. As the mom says, we're doing the best we can. And I think that that's very universal.
Yeah, so this is a historical event, and we there's different little glimpses of the historical story that we get in it. Like it was like the largest search for a person, and I don't think it's a spoiler that lost on a mountain in Maine eventually is found, and traveled over 80 miles in those days that he was lost, and such. So yeah, it's just kind of incredible when you think about the whole story. And I mentioned God earlier, and God had to be present with this boy in order for him to survive, and for him to, draw strength, and all of that. So, yeah, what do you make of this whole event as it transpired back in history?
Interesting. It's coming at it from like I guess a faith angle. I just thought it was fast. I guess growing up as a missionary kid, I saw how faith could work in a myriad of ways in different cultures, and how belief in a higher power, or belief in just something greater than yourself, could just transcend cultures and classes and transcend geography. So my approach to the story was, what makes it special? Well, it's universal because it's about the fact that even a 12-year-old boy can do something incredible. And I think the reason the story has endured as long as it has in book form is because it reminds people that whether they're going through addiction, or maybe they've been to war and they're coming back and they're struggling with readapting. I've heard real stories of people who interacted with Don Fendler who said, like, this story gave me hope and helped me move on and help me cope, rather. So I hope that the movie carries on that legacy, just like that true story on that book did as well.
There was a movie last year from Roadside Attractions, and it was Dreamin' Wild. And when I watched that movie, I kind of just thought, I'm like, this is really the story of the prodigal son. That was the kind of the reflection piece I wrote, my reaction. But you kind of look at this movie, and you can kind of almost transpose that parable of Jesus of the prodigal son, because you have a father and you have two sons, and this one son, he kind of goes a separate way in a sense, like separates from the father and everything, his brother. So there is kind of a little biblical motif there, and of course you can always find and draw out some sort of biblical theme, as we've kind of already talked about. But yeah, what do you think about the prodigal son and this story?
Nobody's ever asked me that question before. I don't even know how to. I mean, yeah, I never thought about those parallels. That's funny. Like that actually is music to my ears in a way, because the faith aspects in the film are very broad on purpose, because I want anybody of any faith, or maybe if they have a lack of faith, to find some sort of meaning in it on a spiritual level. And again, like, there's a father, there's a son, and there's a Holy Spirit in this movie. The mountain is a reflection of God and nature as well. So that Holy Trinity is very present there. So you finding sort of the story of the prodigal son in the movie, I think is exactly my intent, is that everybody can can kind of project their own religious experience and their own faith journey onto the movie.
Yeah, it's an incredible story. So, I love, you mentioned the adventure type film and family adventure. And, I'm a big fan of true stories. A lot of these true story movies that come to theaters, like they always kind of resonate with me because I think we like hearing the stories of what has happened and just seeing them portrayed. So, I'm sure, people have seen this movie and maybe I'm not sure if it was at film festivals or whatnot, but well, what is the reception? What have people reacted as they've taken it in?
One of the reasons whenever I approach a movie or any piece of art that I do, I always have to have a why behind it. The big why. Why am I spending all my time doing this? And the reason I made this film was to bring people together. And more so, I hope that when the credits roll, a parent or maybe a child who is estranged from the parent, who just hasn't talked to them in a while, steps outside the theater, picks up the phone and calls them and tells them, hey, I miss you or I love you. And that has happened. I've had audience members tell me I had to step out and call my child and tell them that I love them. And to me, that's a win. I think that cinema is a conduit for empathy and to remind people to seek the better version of themselves. And to connect. So that's been gratifying, I guess.
I love that, and so I'm a Catholic priest, and there have been Catholic movies out there. There's this movie Fatima, which was about this Portugal Marian apparition and whatnot. And when I watched it, and I had the opportunity, pre-screener link, all that, but when I watched it, like it moved me to go pray a rosary afterwards. Or there was this Spanish documentary about Eucharistic adoration. And afterwards, I'm like, I have to go in the church and pray right now. So I love it when movies can spur us to do something. And so this movie, not a religious film, but it's going to help people love their family or reach out or maybe seek reconciliation, because obviously that is something that is seen in the plot line of Lost on a Mountain in Maine. So yeah, I love that insight that you give.
Yeah, I think in the end, I always say in the end, when times are tough, when the world is crazy, like it can be right now, it's it's not by design that this is coming out right before an election, but it kind of hits the right way. In the end, I say, like, you have to go back to the source, and that is what's within, which is family, community, your friends, your relationships, your connections, and that's what keeps Dawn alive. And so that is what the movie's about. And that is also my own philosophy as well. Family is everything. So
yeah, so this is a great, inspired by real events movie that I think people are going to appreciate. And whether they see it in theaters or however it's distributed afterwards, I think it'll be one of those movies people will really enjoy. So it's coming to theaters this weekend, isn't it? November 1st?
Yeah, tomorrow. I think it's starting to screen a little bit tonight too, or in some theaters.
Yeah, so I just did a bit on radio yesterday. They wanted me to give some commentary on horror films and can a Catholic watch a horror film and all that. And one of the messages I gave, we took some calls and whatnot, and I just said, when good movies come out in the theater, you got to go see them, because your money to the box office says we want more content like this. And so it's important to support these family value, family-friendly movies. So go see Lost on a Mountain in Maine this weekend or as soon as you can. So, well, thanks so much, Andrew, for your time. And yeah, I'll definitely have to look and see what you're coming out with next.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time. Really appreciated this conversation.
If you liked today's episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you're listening. And don't forget to stay up to date with what Father Edward is doing by following him on Facebook, X, or Instagram at the handle @FrEdwardLooney. Thanks for listening, and please join Father Edward again next time for another inspiring conversation.